All right, welcome to day 4, our final day of the Friends of the Farms 4-day fun drive. On day 1, we made our blueberry thyme fizz with our gin. Day 2, we made this tasty looking plum Negroni with our gin and the Amaro Rosina. Day 3, we spiced things up a bit and used our Fernet in a bitter beet cocktail with beet juice, lemon juice, and a honey ginger syrup. And now on day 4, we're going to close things out with a nice nightcap drink, a Fig Infused Black Manhattan. So, for this particular cocktail, since our whiskey is not ready yet, we are going to be using a Buffalo Trace bourbon. We actually use Buffalo Trace barrels for a number of our spirits, including our Amaro that we'll be sampling tonight. So it does spend some time in those barrels after they've been used. So bourbon is the number 1 ingredient. The second ingredient in this one is going to be our Amaro Mealy. So this is actually the first Amaro that we released. This Amaro is pretty unique. It's considered a Rabarbaro style Amaro, and Rabarbaro means rhubarb in Italian. So it's characterized by the infusion of Chinese rhubarb root, which is quite a bit different than the garden variety rhubarb you might be used to. It's the root of the Chinese rhubarb plant, very earthy, smoky, almost has a tobacco character to it, but very traditionally used in Italian Amari. We're combining that with whole bean coffee, cocoa nibs, bitter orange peel, and then we lightly sweeten that with honey. It also spends about 4 months in a former Buffalo Trace barrel, and we do that right before we finish and proof the spirit to 80 proof before bottling. So that's going to be the second ingredient. What differentiates a Black Manhattan from a traditional Manhattan is the Black Manhattan uses Amaro in place of the vermouth and the bitters. So it's typically darker in color and a much simpler cocktail in terms of ingredients. But this one, we're actually going to be using a third ingredient, which is a fig syrup. So fresh figs. To make that, we're taking about a dozen figs along with 1 cup of Demerara sugar, which is more of a raw turbinado style sugar, and a ½ cup of water. I'm going to bring that up to a boil, let those figs get nice and soft, mash those up, make sure they're nice and mixed in there. And then after we let it cool, we're going to strain that through a cheesecloth. Even after doing that, you'll find the fig syrup is quite thick, so you might need to heat that up a little bit just to reduce it enough to mix into your cocktail. So this final cocktail will be a stirred cocktail. So I'm going to start with this mixing glass here. I've got my measuring cup, my stirring spoon, and my strainer. All right, so starting with the first ingredient here, which would be our whiskey. We're going to be using 2 ounces of whiskey. And once our whiskey is released next summer, we'll be able to use our own house-made whiskey. Then we're using a ½ ounce of the Amaro Mealy. This is a pretty strong Amaro. This clocks in at 80 proof, so I would suggest starting with a ½ ounce. I've occasionally used a full ounce in the cocktails, depending on how bitter you want it to be. So ½ ounce of the Mealy. And you'll already see the color of that cocktail is much darker than your traditional Manhattan. And then I'm also going to use a ½ ounce of the fig syrup, which I'm actually going to use a bar spoon for since it's kind of thick there. All right. So we got our ½ ounce of the fig syrup in there. Then I'm going to add my ice. Cube. All right, and then to recap on the stirring technique, you want the back of that spoon to stick along the outside of the glass and try not to be mixing back and forth and really agitating it too much. All right, so we'll give that maybe 5 to 10 seconds here until I can feel it nice and cold on the glass. So it's just about there. All right, I think we're gonna call that good. And then I'm gonna get out my coupe glass, this nice little stemmed glass here. And we're gonna strain that. This cocktail is also served neat. And you get this nice, pretty golden color. All right. And since this is a Fig Infused Black Manhattan, rather than your traditional cherries, I'm actually going to use a skewered half fresh fig there. And there you have it. There's our Fig Infused Black Manhattan. Cheers. All right, now that we've officially made all 4 cocktails, I'm going to invite Heather back out on screen here to close things out with a shot of Fernet, also known as the bartender's handshake. So if you want to get fancy with the name of a shot of Fernet, it's sometimes referred to as the bartender's handshake. It's a very popular drink amongst all of our friends in the bar and restaurant industry, just given how strong of a flavor it is. It's just a great digestif after a big meal or after a long shift. So.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, for doing this for us and for our local farms. And we will toast to you, our donors, for all of your wonderful support this week. Cheers.
Cheers and thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. That is the spot.
Thank you.
Thank you.